Hello and welcome back. In this episode of Oxygen Not Included, we're going to take the Wolframite hydrogen bubbler system, hopefully here to the next level of its little evolution here. So based on the feedback that you guys were giving me from this last system here, where I tested a system that I built in the Super-Duper Duplicant challenge, where I used a lot of wire bridges to transfer heat energy between one and the other area. There was a lot of feedback, and I sort of built up a different system on that base. However, I wanted to take the idea a little bit further and try to compact the whole thing down into kind of a pre-planned chunk that might be able to be placed in somebody's base, and we might be able to kind of test this a little bit more. So this was all based on your different comments that you guys were leaving me back from the previous videos, and I don't have a ton of time to go through all of that, but you know, I'm a little bit on a time crunch today. So I've already preset this up and we're going to run an experiment here, but let me just run you through the dynamics of what's going on here. Over here on the left, I have kind of an area of polluted oxygen. This could be, well, wherever it needs to be. And in the center here, we have our cooling chamber. So I'm using manual airlocks. They're half the density of a mechanized airlock, and they can both be built of Wolframite. So therefore, less dense density. It should be able to change temperature faster because it's less dense, but it honestly, it's made of the same material, so it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just cheaper to build, right? So 200 kilograms of Wolframite as compared to 400 kilograms of Wolframite. That's why I'm using manual airlocks there, and that's going to be the transferring medium between my hydrogen and the polluted oxygen down here. One thing that I've never done before is I'm including some wheezeworts. We saw in previous tests that wheezeworts actually have quite a bit of energy that they can move around. So this is pre-populated with hydrogen. However, we might want to have a vent in here for some additional hydrogen to find its way into this system. That's absolutely possible. What is one cool thing about this is that since these wheezeworts are over here on the left, the natural flow of this chamber is going to be in a spiral because it's creating high pressure up here because wheezeworts move that air from the bottom, or move whatever gas here from the beneath it to above it. So it's actually swirling a little bit, and that keeps all of the gas rotating so it can continuously cool. So the temperature here should drop quite rapidly just from the wheezeworts. I also have two pumps here with a gas bridge, so I should be able to get about 1 kilogram moving through this pipe to this thermal regulator. So compared to the systems where I'm only using one gas pump up here, that means more or less I have to use less thermal regulators. So this should be equivalent to about 2 thermal regulators compared to what this system up here originally was. So we're saving some energy that way. It'll also be heating up twice as quick. So what I have over here on the right is a cooling system. This cooling system is liquid based. So if we follow the path of power here, you'll see that there's a hydro switch that will turn the in-feed pump off. So this is just coming from a resource somewhere on the map that's pumping in polluted water to this area. Something very easy. You can have toilets or whatever just dump into this space. So once this reaches this area or this level up here, this hydro switch will turn off. Therefore, I have enough volume in this space. At that point, if this thermal switch up here, which is right next to the thermal regulator, gets hot enough, the pump down here will turn off. That feeds a liquid valve, which is at reduced rate, so it's about 1,000 grams a second. I could probably turn that down to about 500 grams a second, and that will drip down onto the thermal regulator, cooling it back down and hopefully cooling some of the air up there. So that should make this liquid pump intermediate rather than just constantly running. So that potentially might work. Otherwise, I might just get rid of that thermal switch and just kind of fill up that liquid path right there so that it's just constantly dripping out. That's already a pretty efficient thing with that liquid pump. If the liquid becomes too hot, this pump here will turn on, kicking some of that liquid out of the system, again reducing it down to a point where this hydro switch will then turn back on so that we pull more from wherever this basin is. So that's the liquid cooling system over here on the right. Down here on the bottom, again, I have another hydro switch, and once we get enough liquid oxygen into this space right here, we will then pump it over here, and that will, you know, just transfer through some normal tiles, making it nice, clean oxygen at that point. So that's how the system works. let's see if it actually functions as I think it hopefully should. So right off the bat, the first thing we can see here is that the temperature of the hydrogen is slowly dropping down thanks to these wheezeworts, but it isn't really moving that quickly. And I'm actually going to wait until this turns off. Let me make sure I put it on above so that it does turn off. No, 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 no. Below. There we go. Alright, so there's a lot of liquid over there. Let me go ahead and make sure I turn this to above. That will then turn on these gas pumps, and that is going to start this just cycling through very, very quickly. So right now I can see inside of here contains 1 kilogram of hydrogen. I'm using that wire bridge. Sorry, not the wire bridge, the gas bridge connection that you guys were telling me about. Some people have used this in very, very creative ways to actually get free energy, I've seen down there, but that way I can combine. So that's a real pro tip. Thank you guys for that tip, by the way. So now we can see the temperature in here. Hopefully, at least if I just look at this thermal switch, it should be going down. What I am seeing though is that the temperature here is just too hot. So the idea of this thermal switch being there, it just isn't going to work. So I'm just going to have to run the good old standard system here that just runs through a liquid valve at a reduced rate, and we'll just have to see what that temperature ends up like. And that works fine. I mean, look at this pump. It doesn't really run that much, just every once in a while. And we're at a very accelerated rate right now. It looks like I am getting a little bit of over-pressurization of this gas vent. I thought this wheezewort here would actually work to kind of suck some of that away, plus the fact that it's right next to a gas pump. But it might be in my best interest to reduce the amount of hydrogen inside of here a little bit. So let me go ahead and do that. I filled this entire area with 2 kilograms of hydrogen. So if I paint in a little bit of vacuum, let's see what happens. Alright, there we go. Now it's up and running. Just to give us an idea real quick what that looks like. Oh, roughly about 1.5 kilograms in this space. Alright, so looking at the temperature overlay of this, entire system here, it looks like just about everything is maintaining about the same temperature, so it's nice and even. Coming out of this vent is a little bit colder than everything else, but for the most part it's staying fairly close, and that's what I would expect to see, because that cold wants to drop down, and having the heat exchanger up here from right to left or left to right sort of deal, that should cause a lot of that cold to want to drop down, as opposed to having a vertical system. It's a horizontal system. The other thing is this is also a counterflow, so the hottest should be over here on the left and then the coldest should be on the right, and we found in previous tests that was the best result. So that's what I'm kind of hoping to reproduce here. It should come in at a warmer temperature and then get colder and colder, and this should be the coldest area of the cooler system up top. So it should, at this point, turn to liquid. If it's going to turn to liquid at any point, it should turn right here. And then down here, this will be liquid oxygen at some point, and then it'll drip down into this space and fill it up. That's the hopes. Alright, it's taking forever to cool down. I think it mostly has to do with these airlocks just being such a high mass. Look at that, 200 kilograms. I don't know. That's got to be part of the problem. Let's go ahead and try to change this to granite. And I'll move that Wolframite out of here just to see what happens. Actually, that's not a good idea either. It's going to be about the exact same. So if I go back to the insulated tile, let's see what happens. If anything, there was more granite, which was more mass. Right now, it's a question of mass. Alright, so right off the bat, we can see the temperature is dropping very rapidly now. Down to 80 degrees Celsius. It's probably going to go even lower than that here pretty soon. Hopefully. 81.6 is where it's kind of zeroed out. So maybe these wheezeworts are actually giving off a little bit of heat. Let me go ahead and deconstruct these real quick. And the temperature drops like crazy. Okay, so putting wheezeworts inside there did not work. So they would be okay for a pre-cooling system that would be cooling down this polluted oxygen over here on the left, but it's certainly not something that you want to have in a chamber where you're going to have your very, very cold hydrogen. So that might have solved that problem right there. Let's go ahead and go back to the manual airlocks and see what happens now. Alright, so that we can see now that the temperature is dropping. It's taking its time though. those manual airlocks do have a lot of mass, so now we're seeing that play into factor here. But it's not ridiculous. I mean, you can see the temperature there. It's continuing to drop. Now, I am playing the game again here at a very accelerated rate, but the thing is, once that gets cold enough, it should then be hard for it to warm back up once we start, you know, bombarding it with polluted oxygen. However, it is still taking a long time. Let me go ahead and see what these wire bridges, what their mass is. Only 25 kilograms. So I'm going to run a little bit of a combination here, actually. So now I have all these insulated tiles and then only one manual airlock. So the idea is that this should be able to drop down in temperature quite a bit faster because there's less mass there. And what I'm going to do is put in a couple of Wolframite wire bridges here to kind of draw that temperature. So that's less Wolframite mass in this same area. Alright, so now we're down to temperature. See, that didn't take too long. So it's now negative 180 some degrees Celsius right there, and it can actually continue to drop even further at this point. So maybe I'll set this to like 220 or so. Alright, so there we go. So now the system is trying to balance out as far as its temperature goes, and it looks like it balanced really quickly. Like it only turned on once. The cooling system over here on the right, that has worked perfectly this entire time. It really has not gone up in temperature all that much. 35 degrees Celsius as compared to 32 when it started off. So, gosh, that could run for a very long time. Now let me go ahead and enable this pump here real quick. Let me turn the speed back down. How about just 5x? Alright, here we go. So now we're going to pump in a lot of polluted oxygen here, and we'll see what that temperature is right off the bat. We're starting to get a little bit of liquid oxygen. Things are being converted right off the bat. The manual airlock is maintaining its temperature quite quickly. However, the wire bridge is warming up a little bit. So you can see that method right there is working. So that actually is quite promising there. And now these pumps are running, so all of this has to kind of turn back on. This liquid pump down here will have to get down to the right temperature. It looks like it is now. Negative 193 degrees Celsius, so that's nice and cold. At this point, we're going to build up liquid. So we'll be getting less oxygen up here. And you can see the mass just starting to increase now. So hey, it's nice to see that working. The one problem I have right now is that I'm just not getting any reports as far as power is concerned. I'm using a little bit of a cheat to keep this battery at a certain level. And in the past that's worked, but tonight it isn't working, which is unfortunate. Okay, cool, so look at this now. So now this pump runs a little bit, and then these turn on just to cool it back down. So the system is really balanced out now. Awesome, so it's just continuing to work. And it looks like it's producing at a good rate. I mean, look, it's just constantly flowing liquid oxygen down here. And it looks like it's balanced out as far as the temperatures are concerned. There's something to the system. So over here, right next to this gas vent, look at that, the polluted oxygen is negative 100. It goes from about negative 90 or so just to about negative 150. It kind of it bounces a little bit right there. And then as it moves to the right, again, it kind of bounces a little bit. And then it eventually reaches negative 180 and just drips down right off the bat. Huh. So it's really being forced across this Wolframite right here, and it's working. Alright, so I brought in some duplicants to fire up the system and get it all running. So hopefully my reports here... Yeah, there we go. Alright, so I'm going to get some reports out of this. I just want to see how much liquid, how much oxygen we're converting in a day here. I don't have a lot of time left, so... I think it's working out pretty good, actually. Let me go ahead and just do this number real quick. Ooh, who's ready for some results? This system over here on the left actually worked out pretty good. Check it out. Okay, so on average, it produced 136.5 kilograms of oxygen a day. That's a pretty decent amount. I mean, that's not bad. And it came at a pretty good cost, too, because it only consumed 307 kilojoules of power per day. So that's, that was its average. So that gives us a watts per oxygen, or kilogram of oxygen, of 3.75, compared to the previous two systems where it was 11.24 and 16.88, which wasn't necessarily all that accurate. That's a much better result, much more in line of some of the early systems that we saw back. Okay, I think we've done a few of these hydrogen bubbler systems at this point. But no, I mean, back to the day when we were actually running radiator systems, and, we weren't doing a lot to optimize that system. However, we were getting a lot of free energy based on that. This result is not far off of that, and it's not benefiting from free energy in any sort of way. So 3.75 is not a bad number right there. And that is a potentially scalable design as well, considering how far you can make that from left to right and how many of these gas vents you could add. You could potentially go from right to left as well. Not to mention the liquid cooling system over here worked out good this entire time. The amount of temperature that this polluted water went up was like absolutely minuscule. So you may never have to run this pump to like vent out the liquid at any point. You'd probably be tired of playing the game by the time that water heated up enough. So, hey, there you have it. That worked out pretty good. And if I go ahead and take this back and, add a little bit of, bring the levels up here, we should see that this pump will kick on. And boom, there we go. Now we have all of this oxygen over here, several kilograms worth of it. However, we did see that the power here spiked up just for a moment there, so I overdrew on the power just a little bit. But still, check that out. Look at that. We're getting all of this oxygen over there. Look at that. Kilograms and kilograms worth of oxygen. And it's very, very cold. Look at that. Look at how cold that is. Well, there you have it, guys. That is a little bit of a different setup for a hydrogen bubbler system, but I think it worked out really good. Thank you guys for all of your recommendations and helping make this possible. If you guys have more recommendation comments and stuff for me to try out here in the game, go ahead and let me know down there in the comment section below. The new update will be coming very soon to this game, so I'm looking forward to getting into that and trying out several of the new things that'll bring to the game. So thank you guys so much for all of your support recently. If I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Have a great day, guys. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar out.